Howdy, and welcome to episode 4 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen, and today is Thursday, July 7th, 2016. For those of you who are returning viewers, thank you so much for coming back. I've enjoyed reading some comments that have been made on Instagram and on Ravelry, so thank you for those. And if you are a new viewer, thank you for checking out the podcast, and I hope that you will return. So, 2 weeks, actually a little over 2 weeks since I recorded the last podcast episode, since I recorded a little early last time. A lot has happened in those 2 weeks. I went to Houston Viberfest basically right after recording the last podcast. I drove down to Houston on Thursday, set up Friday morning. The vendor hall was open Friday afternoon, and then Saturday. Broke down the booth on Saturday evening, and then drove home on Sunday. So it was kind of a jam-packed weekend there. It was a really wonderful festival. It's in its second year. I did not attend last year. We had a family vacation planned right at the same time, so I didn't get to go to Houston. But it was a really great event. Even in its second year, I can already see that it's definitely going to grow and continue to be a really great festival. So I'm excited by that. I got to meet lots of new people. It was kind of strange because I'm so used to all the people in the Dallas area, seeing a lot of familiar faces. And I did see some familiar faces, but really, for the most part, there were mostly new faces. So that was really exciting. And it was really good. I enjoyed that experience. So as long as the Houston Fiberfest committee wants me back, I'll be back next year. Okay, so I drove back from Houston that Sunday. My husband had a business trip in Boston, and he actually also left on Sunday. And we missed each other. So as I was driving home from Houston, he was getting on his plane to Boston. Grandma got to watch the little guy for that morning before I came back. So didn't get to see my husband before his business trip, but what we did is on that Thursday, I flew up to meet him in Boston. So our 4-year-old and I got on a plane, which I was dreading because the last time that we went on a plane was 2 years ago, so he was 2, and it was a miserable experience. We haven't wanted to take him on a plane since then. So I was a little hesitant about this, but he actually was really, really well behaved. Probably had to do with him having access to an iPad the whole time, but you know what? It kept him quiet, it kept people around us happy, so definitely a much better experience, especially since I was by myself on the plane with him, since my husband was already up in Massachusetts. So we got to Boston on Thursday. My husband's conference finished, so we actually didn't stay in Boston. We drove down to Plymouth, which it really is not very far from Boston, but when you add in the traffic, it adds a lot of extra time. So we didn't get to our hotel in Plymouth until sometime after 9 o'clock, I think. So by that time, Luke was definitely tired and starting to act like a 4-year-old, basically. But overall, he did great traveling. Anyway, so the reason we went down to Plymouth is because it was very close to Edaville, which is a railroad, and they have an amusement park. And I think it was last summer, may have been the summer before, but fairly recently, they opened Thomas Land. So Thomas Land is for Thomas the Tank Engine. If you're not familiar with that, it's been a very long-running, actually, series of books and TV show and several movies, lots of toys. And my son is a huge Thomas fan, really huge. He has a ton of engines, lots of tracks. He now builds the tracks where they go all over his playroom. He doesn't use the train table anymore. He's not limited to that. So we were really excited that we got to take him to Thomas Land, and sure enough, he loved it. Had a really good time, rode almost every single ride. got to meet Sir Topham Hatt, do all the stuff that for a fan of Thomas was really exciting for him. And that was kind of the main reason why we went up there. So since my husband was already up there for business, it was pretty easy for us to go. So we really didn't have any other big plans. We did spend a day up in Salem, which was nice. My mom is actually from Rhode Island, and my husband's dad is actually from Massachusetts. So both of us have been up to the area, visiting family, but neither one of us had been up there since we were teenagers, actually. So it was nice to visit a place that was somewhat familiar, but really not. So we got to explore a lot of things. So we spent a day in Salem. We didn't do any of like the witch tours or whatever, which we normally would probably do, but since we had our 4-year-old, weren't really sure how scary some of those might be, we decided not to do those. We did go to the House of Seven Gables, and it was fun to walk through that. They had a little like crafting area at the kind of a self-guided part of the tour, and in one of those rooms there was a woman who had some wool that she was carding with some hand cards, and she had a spindle out on the table, and she was inviting people to use the hand cards. And I noticed that the hand cards were modern day hand cards. There was one that had the Ashford logo on it. So it was interesting to kind of see that blend of modern with historical stuff. Anyway, so I did not do any hand carding since I've done that before. I let the other people who were visiting go ahead and do that. Let's see, what else did we do? We went to Plymouth Plantation, which is a recreation of a 17th century village, as well as a Native American area. And there we got to see another set of craft areas, like baking bread, and then there was a loom that was set up. Unfortunately, the person who was doing the demo was tying off, I guess, the fringe or the ends on something she had just finished, so the loom itself she wasn't using. But it was kind of neat to see some of those fiber arts things in the stuff that we visited. And we just mostly kind of walked around, did some shopping, stayed in Plymouth except for that one day in Salem. And then the day that we left, which was actually just Tuesday, our flight wasn't until later in the afternoon, so we actually went to the New England Aquarium in Boston, another place that was definitely a big hit with the 4-year-old. So that was fun. And we saw the fireworks in Plymouth. If you've read the news, you might have seen an article about the fireworks in Plymouth. So we waited and waited. We got some good seats, and there were other kids that were running around, and so Luke was kind of having fun with them. And by the way, here's my cat. She's kind of over here in the corner. This is Guinevere. Hi, Guinevere. Anyway, so we were waiting for the fireworks, and they started, and they were pretty nice. And then the show didn't seem to last very long, and suddenly there was this. It seemed like maybe a finale because a lot of fireworks seemed to go off at once, but they were pretty low on the horizon rather than up high like the other fireworks had been. So we were a little confused, and everything stopped, and so the crowd were kind of looking around at each other saying, was that the finale? Was that the end? What happened? And then suddenly another couple of fireworks kind of shot off, and so we thought, oh, maybe it's still going. And then nothing else happened. So we finally just, with the rest of the crowd, kind of turned and went our way. It wasn't until the next morning that we read in the paper, which it made the national news, that the barge that the fireworks was on caught on fire, and all of them went off at once, which was that finale that we saw that we weren't sure about. Fortunately, no one was injured, so I'm very, very thankful for that. But yeah, we were watching that show that got basically cut short by a huge fire. So I guess it's kind of exciting to be part of that national news story. So there were several yarn acquisitions that happened on the trip, which I will actually talk about in the what I'm stashing section in a little bit. But really, that's kind of the update of what basically has been going on for the past 2 weeks and what's been keeping me super busy. I'm really relieved that we don't have any major travel plans coming up for the next, definitely the next month, and not really anything major on the horizon. So I will be getting back to my normal routine, which I'm really looking forward to. So next, let's talk about this week's t-shirt and shawl. Okay, so for today's t-shirt, it is a Doctor Who related shirt, and it is basically the Union Jack created out of little tiny TARDISes. So I'm actually gonna show you a close-up of this shirt so you can see, if you're a Doctor Who fan, they are little TARDISes. I guess TARDISes is the right plural for that. Anyway, so I picked this shirt today because it's going to be technically related to the shawl as well, but also because I realized that when I had packed for the trip to Massachusetts, apparently what I packed were a lot of Doctor Who t-shirts, because that's what I ended up with. And which, you know, probably there is a good percentage of my t-shirt collection that is made up of Doctor Who shirts. So it's not surprising that I had a bunch of them, but it was a little troubling on July 4th when I looked in my suitcase and I realized that all I had left were Doctor Who shirts or a Harry Potter shirt. And I thought that on July 4th, going out to celebrate America's Independence Day, that I might not want to wear a shirt, either Doctor Who or Harry Potter, that was highly regarded as kind of a British thing. So fortunately, I had one more shirt that was just a basic kind of purple shirt that I was able to wear instead, but a little bit of a worry there that my choices for shirts on July 4th were British shirts. But anyway, I guess that just means I need to be kind of watchful when I'm packing. So really, there's not much more that I want to say about the shirt. I have a lot of things that I would say about Doctor Who. There goes the cat. But I think I will save those for future podcasts. So that's it on the shirt. Now on to the shawl. So this shawl, which I will show you. There you go. It's a triangular shawl. That might give you a better look at kind of some of the patterns. This is the Bow Ties Are Cool shawl by Jenny Santopietro. Sorry, Jenny, if I got your last name wrong. So she designed this and released it as a mystery knit-along. It is a Doctor Who inspired shawl. And I will be honest, I don't really like doing mystery knit-alongs. Knit-alongs are great, but mystery knit-alongs I'm not as into because I like knowing what I'm going to get at the end of my knitting time. So I really have never done a mystery knit-along. However, with this one, it was a Doctor Who related mystery. So I thought, well, there's a chance that I might like it. Two, the designer, Jenny, I've kind of worked with her a little in the past. I provided yarn support for one of her other patterns. So I've liked her other shawl patterns that she's designed. And so I thought, well, it's probable that I will like this mystery shawl as well. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to give it a try. So fortunately, she designed a really fantastic pattern with a lot of fun things involved. All of these sections with the in my shawl, the blue color that have kind of the stripes, they all symbolize something specific in Doctor Who, mostly characters. And you're able, kind of toward the beginning of the shawl, you're able to encode your favorite Doctor into the shawl. So this is the section, this is Classic Who, and then this is the reboot, 9th through 12th Doctors. So in there is a secret code for which doctor is my favorite doctor. I'll tell you that later. I'm going to keep it a secret for now. So it's a very easy to modify shawl, even as a mystery. She made it very clear kind of what you were doing in that section, so you could make some decisions on how you wanted to modify the shawl to correspond with your Doctor Who kind of favorites for characters and whatnot. So that was a lot of fun. There were quite a few participants in the mystery knit along, and the Ravelry group had a lot of examples of the shawl going on, lots of color combinations. So it was a really fun experience, and I was glad that I did it. This just happened not too long ago. This is a much newer shawl than some of the ones that I've shown on the previous episodes. So this was definitely a fun experience. I don't know how often I would do a mystery knit along again, but I'm really glad that I did this one. The pattern is now just available as a general pattern. It's not a mystery type of pattern anymore, but it's definitely available. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, I highly recommend it. It was a fun to knit pattern. Easy enough to do when you're watching TV, but with enough changes in what you're doing and enough challenges to keep it interesting. So I really, really liked knitting it. As far as the yarns, the speckled yarn is Plymouth Yarn's Happy Feet. I will put the exact name in the show notes. I think that's what it is. Which I picked up on a whim last year when we were in Colorado. I'll be honest, I'm really not a fan of the speckled yarn craze. So I don't know what possessed me to buy a speckled yarn, but I picked one up, which actually was perfect for this knit along because it actually called for a speckled yarn. So I was like, oh, I have that. So good thing that I picked that up on a whim. And now I'm getting visited by another cat. So come look in the camera. This one is Sam. There we go. You might be able to see him now. That's Sam. He's actually Samwise Gamgee. So there's Sam. And my third cat, because we have three, his name is Merlin. Maybe he'll make an appearance on this episode. Anyway, so I picked up the speckled yarn completely on a whim. And as I was trying to figure out what to pair with it for this shawl, because again, it was a mystery, I didn't know exactly how these yarns would work together, I pulled this yarn kind of out of my deep stash, the blue yarn. This is yarn that was dyed by a dyer, went by the name Mama Blue. And if you were around, gosh, it was probably 2009, maybe even earlier than that, Mama Blue was one of those dyers that was like all the rage, and everyone wanted to get Mama Blue yarn. Whenever she posted an update in her shop, it sold out in 5 minutes or less. I mean, it was crazy. She's no longer dyeing. I think there were some family issues and she decided to stop dyeing. But I have to admit, because the yarn is basically, I can't get it anymore, I'd been kind of just holding on to it and not using it. And I still have, I think, 2 more skeins of Mama Blue unused in my stash. But I decided, you know what? It actually looks really good with this pink yarn. I don't see any reason to just keep it in my stash. That's kind of silly. I should go ahead and use it. And I'm glad I did, because I think they really work well together, and I'm very happy with how the shawl turned out. And in fact, the designer Jenny, she actually used one of my pictures in the pattern from this shawl. So thank you, Jenny, for including that in your pattern. And thank you especially for designing the wonderful pattern. It's really, really awesome, fun to knit. I think I've said that multiple times. It was really, really fun to knit. I definitely recommend it. So I think that takes care of the t-shirt and shawl. So let's go on with the rest of the podcast. Okay, so last time I mentioned that I will be hosting quarterly knit-alongs for the podcast, and the first one was starting July 1st. So it's after July 1st, and this first knit-along is now underway. So I will link in the show notes to the Ravelry group thread about the knit along where you can chat. There already have been several people who've posted what they plan to knit for this quarter. This quarter's theme, really broad and general, a shawl made with fingering weight yarn. So really easy. You should be able to find a lot of options. In fact, maybe too many options. But already there's some great suggestions for what people are going to be making in the Ravelry group. So if you're interested, I hope you'll join us. And I'm still trying to decide myself what I'm going to knit. I thought that I was going to do a pie shawl, but I looked at the yarn requirement and it needs 950 yards. And the designer made a note that she pretty much used like almost all of that yarn. So I have some yarns that are close to, that are in my stash that are close to 950. Like I think there's several that I have, like 850 yards. Some that I have closer to 900. But since she said she used up almost all of the 950, I really want to make sure that I have enough. So most of my stash, I don't have enough. Or there are a few lots of some fingering weight yarn in my stash that I have way over 950. Like I have closer to 2,000 yards. And since that's more of a sweater quantity, I kind of want to keep that for a sweater and not use half of it for a shawl. And I could go yarn shopping and get more yarn, but I think that I will kind of put that shawl on hold. And instead, what I plan to knit is a design that's actually by that same designer that designed this shawl. So Jenny Santo, I'm just gonna shorten her last name. I think she's actually done that as well. So she has a pattern collection that she's been releasing. The collection will eventually have 3 shawls in it. She released the first shawl, which is called Mother of Invention, last month, I think it was. And it's a really neat shawl that uses different colors, and the way that the stripes are done is just really neat. I like it. And I will link to the ebook collection in the show notes. But actually just today, I think it was just today, the second pattern in that collection was released, and it's called Charlatan. And it is, I think, a really neat, it's technically a triangular shawl, but I think that the construction of it is really neat. So I will pop a picture of the shawl up right here so you can see it. So this is Charlatan, and it calls for 2 different colors, and the kind of the middle section she recommends using like a variegated yarn. And kind of like speckled yarn, I'm not a big fan of variegated yarn. I do lots of things with lace stitch patterns and cables, which just really get lost in variegated yarn, so I don't have much of that in my stash. However, I do have this skein from Vice Yarns that has been in my stash for a little while, not a super long time. It may have been last year or the year before that I bought it. So it's been in my stash for a little while, and I honestly have no idea why I bought it, except I like the colors. Because I really don't use variegated yarn very often. But I thought this might be a really great pattern to use this yarn. So then I have to figure out, okay, what do I pair with it for the solid section with the lace stitch pattern for this shawl. So I went through my stash and pulled out a few options. So this is some Plucky Knitter. This is a merino cashmere nylon blend. The Vice Yarns is actually a merino cashmere silk blend, so it does feel nice, and that may have also enticed me to get it. So this is the Plucky Knitter, and this is old school Plucky Knitter, because if you see on the tag, there are no names for any of the bases, just a list of possible bases, and then she would circle the one that this one is. So the Plucky Knitter has definitely done some changing in the yarn bases as far as the naming of them. So this has been in my stash for a while. So I thought, well, maybe these two together. But I started looking at the greens that are in the variegated, and I realized it kind of goes, but I'm not really sold on this combo. So I'm like, okay, I'll keep looking. Well, there are some kind of pinks and purpley kind of colors in here, so maybe something that's pink. So I came up with this combination. And this is Julie Spins, which I think I've mentioned before. I just dropped it on the floor. Hang on. Oh, okay. Here we go. So Julie Spins, which I've mentioned before. And this is also something that I have had in my stash for a while. So long, in fact, that apparently the tag came loose from the yarn and I have to kind of tuck it in here. So I thought, well, maybe that'll work. But it still isn't really saying this is the right pair. I think it's better than the green, but not the best. So then I pulled out some Malabrigo sock yarn, and it's this purple color. So this is the Violetta Africana color. And if you look at these two together, I think the purple there we go. I think the purple here really draws out some of those purples there. I think it actually works with the greens. They seem to go together pretty nicely. So I'm not 100% decided, but I think I'm 99% sure that this is the combo that I'm going to use. So that is the shawl that I plan to do, starting, at least to start, for the Q3 knit along. So if you go to that group, then I will be posting my decision on the yarn, and you'll also get to see what everyone else is knitting. And don't forget, there are prizes, so make sure that if you want to participate, you go ahead over to the Ravelry group and let us know. So I think really that's it as far as kind of podcast updates. So let's go on to what I've been knitting. Okay, what I've been knitting for the past 2 weeks. The answer is not much. With the Houston Fiber Fest, and then our trip to Massachusetts, which usually I would do a lot of travel knitting. When you're traveling with a 4-year-old by yourself on the plane, you really don't get much travel knitting in. So I haven't had a lot of time to knit. What I have worked on has been the Quaker yarn stretcher. So I showed this, I think, in episode 2. I probably should have put a progress marker where I was back in episode 2, but I think I've probably knit at least, well, maybe at least that much. So I've knit a fair amount on this one, even though it doesn't really look like it's all that big yet, but I still have quite a bit of yarn to go. And basically this is a knit until you run out of yarn project. This is my hand spun, yeah, it's one of those knits that is really easy to do while watching TV or even reading. So it's a pretty good project, just to kind of pick up and do a little bit here and there. But I did work on that. So that is one thing I've made a little bit of progress on. The other project that I'm working on is something that I started right before we left for Massachusetts, knit a tiny bit on in Massachusetts, and then knit a little bit this morning. And so I'm not very far along on it. This is a hat. Pretty much I have the brim of the hat, and I have started the first round of the actual pattern. So this is actually some of my self-striping yarn. So Round Table Yarns Merlin in the Deeds of Arms colorway. And so it's a brown, green, navy, and orange. Anyway, this hat is the Checkerwork hat pattern by Vexy. And this pattern was brought to my attention by somebody who knit it out of my Merlin, but in a different colorway, the Sword in the Stone colorway, which is the yellow, gray, and black. And I will pop a picture of his hat right here because I think it just turned out really fantastic. And it's a great example of what you can do with self-striping yarn besides make socks. So this was knit by Tim, who is in the Dallas area. So somebody that I'm able to see it at festivals around here. And just before I left for Boston, I ran up to the local yarn shop, my local yarn shop, and he was also able to make it there. So I got to see this hat as well as another hat by the same designer that has kind of a similar effect with self-striping yarn. I got to see them in person, and really, really great pattern. Tim did a great job on his hat, and so it inspired me to knit my own, which eventually will be a hat. Now that I'm past the 1x1 ribbing and into the pattern, which is a really, really easy to memorize repeat, I should be able to make much better progress on this. So hopefully in 2 weeks, maybe it'll be finished. But it definitely should have more progress by the next podcast. And honestly, that is what I've been knitting. Really has been hard to get some knitting time in the past 2 weeks. So again, another reason I am relieved to be done with traveling, so that way I can have a little more time to get back into knitting. What I did do was a little bit of spinning, so I'll talk about that next. So what I'm spinning. Technically I should put this in the what I finished section because it is a finished spin, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it in what I'm spinning. So I had shown you on a previous episode that I had this beautiful blue fiber on one of my wheels, and so I took some time to finish out the singles and apply it. So it is a 2-ply. It is fingering weight, and I plan to knit some type of shawl out of it. So try to put it up here where you can maybe see it. It's a nice, just really kind of dark blue. I really, really like the color and how it turned out. It has been washed, but I haven't reskeined it after washing, so I still need to measure it to find out the exact yardage and all of that. But glad that I was able to finish this. The fiber was dyed by Nerd Girl Yarns, and really, really great BFL silk blend. So fun to work with. So finished spinning, yay! Then I have the other spinning project that I've been working on for quite a while. So I'm gonna see if I can get the camera, kind of turn it around and show you the actual progress on the wheel. So here is my current spin, and I actually spent some time yesterday spinning on this. So I am spinning, this is 2F by hand, who dyed the fiber, and I have that little bit that you see there left to spin, as well as this bit. So that is all that I have left of this one to spin. It has been one long single that I've been working on, and after I finish that, I plan to chain ply it. Tonight is spin night at my local yarn shop, so I should be able to finish out the rest of this single tonight. So that's really exciting. And then once I apply that, I get to go through my fiber stash and figure out what to spin next. One last bit for the spinning section. I think it was actually just later that day that I finished recording the last episode of the podcast that this magazine arrived in my mailbox. So this is Ply Magazine. There you go, Ply Magazine. This is a magazine all about hand spinning, and this is a really, really pretty cover. And each issue has a specific theme. So this one is bulky. And I'll be honest that I am not interested very much in bulky yarn. I don't really spin bulky, and I don't knit with bulky. So when I saw the theme for that issue, I thought, I don't know if there's going to really be much for me in this issue. But I was really surprised by how much I learned out of this, and really enjoyed the articles in here. And I think that as far as spinning thicker yarns, one of the articles that was really neat was this one from Sylvia Becker called Build. So basically the idea is that if you spin thin, what you do is you just spin a lot of singles and then build a bulky yarn by plying all those singles. So you can see here, she's got this basically homemade Lazy Kate with 8 different bobbins for the singles to spin thin singles and then ply them all together to bulk up the yarn. And I really love this picture that they took of this setup. So here we go, of all these singles bobbins and plying them together. Obviously you wouldn't spin it on the stairs like this, but I think that the photograph is really neat. So I was really surprised that even though I'm not usually interested in bulky, that there was a lot of good stuff in this magazine. Complete full disclosure here, I do work for Ply Magazine. I am the copy editor. That's me. So I do see all the articles before it gets released. So I actually see them before all the pictures and everything are in there. And then I do see the layout with the pictures. But what I never see until it arrives is the cover or the back cover. The back cover is pretty too. So those are always surprises to me. But it does mean that I get to read every article in depth. So I really do enjoy both working for Ply and also just the magazine itself. If you are a spinner and you do not already subscribe to Ply, or at least buy it at your local yarn shop, you really should. It is super, super helpful information. Lots of wonderful things found in this magazine. And in the end of each issue, you get to see a coming soon page that tells you what all of the next issues will be. And the next issue that comes out in the autumn is the boucle issue. And when I saw that topic, I was like, how are they going to fill an entire magazine on boucle? And I've already read through most of the articles for this one. Oh my gosh, it was fascinating. I don't want to give things away, but it was really a neat issue. So I think those of you who will be getting that, you'll enjoy that issue. And then the next 3 after that will be the plying issue, the down issue, so all the down breeds, and the bobbin lead issue, which I think there are still some, I think the proposals for the bobbin lead might already be the deadline passed, but if you're super interested in that, you might still contact them. So love Ply Magazine. Definitely subscribe if you don't already. The magazine is very content heavy and ad light. So really the money that is used to create the magazine is from subscriptions. So if there aren't people who subscribe, then the magazine won't exist anymore. The advertisers are great, but they actually do not pay for the magazine. It is mostly the subscriptions. So definitely a wonderful, wonderful magazine that I'm proud to be part of, and I hope that you'll subscribe if you haven't already. And that takes care of spinning for this time. So let me think. I have, stash. I actually have some stash enhancement to talk about. So while we were up in Massachusetts, I definitely wanted to visit some yarn shops because I like to buy yarn as my souvenirs. Instead of buying t-shirts or other types of things, I buy yarn. So although there were several yarn shops that were listed in Boston, since we weren't really in Boston for very long, I didn't get a chance to visit any of those. But when we went up to Salem, Ravelry had 2 yarn shops listed in Salem. And one of the things you need to be careful about on Ravelry, if you're using it, or actually any listing of yarn shops, if you're using it as a basis of where you're going to go on your trip, is to make sure that that yarn shop still exists. Apparently, one of the yarn shops, either the information wasn't up to date or it doesn't exist anymore. But I got to go to Circle of Stitches, which was a really, really nice shop. Very well lit with a good selection of yarns, and the person who was working there that day was super friendly, and so it was a really nice experience. And one of the reasons I wanted to go is because it is the home of Toil and Trouble. So that glare is awful. So Toil and Trouble, which is hand dyed in Salem by her name is ANA. So I don't know if it's Anna or Anna. Another person that I know that's ANA is Anna. So I'm not really sure, but she is someone that Toil and Trouble I actually follow on Instagram, and so I was really excited to be able to go to Circle of Stitches and to see her yarn and to buy some. So that is what I ended up with. Since it is hand-dyed in Salem, it definitely is souvenir yarn. So I bought 2 skeins. So the first one that I bought is the Cadence base, which is a worsted weight in this hyacinth color. So different kind of tonal shades of purple. Worsted weight, so it'll probably become a hat or something like that, which is kind of my go-to for worsted weight yarns. But I really like the color, so definitely wanted that. And then I also picked up, this base is the Sonnet Sport in the Sea Glass colorway. So I really liked this color as well. And I thought with sport weight, that gave me a few different options for what I might be able to do with it. It is 100% superwash merino, so I probably won't do socks since it doesn't have nylon in it, but definitely a cowl or maybe some fingerless mitts or something like that. But definitely very happy to get this souvenir yarn. The other yarn that I picked up was when we went to the Plymouth Plantation. They had their museum shop and there was a little display of yarn. So I actually got 2 skeins of this. So this is yarn from the Plymouth Plantation, and it is a worsted weight yarn. And this is yarn that comes from the sheep that they actually have on the Plymouth Plantation. They send it off to Harrisville Designs to spin it into yarn, and then they dye it with natural dyes. I'm not really sure what is used to get the green. I know green is a really hard color. Can be a really hard color to get with natural dyes, but the color is called Lincoln Green. So this is worsted weight. It came in 50 gram skeins, so that's why I picked up 2, because I figure with 100 grams, again, I can make a hat or something like that out of it. Although these might become maybe fingerless mitts or something, especially since it's already divided into 2 skeins. So not sure what I'm going to do with it, but definitely really great souvenir yarn. So those 4 skeins are my what I'm stashing over the past 2 weeks. I actually have some yarn that is supposed to arrive in the mail today. So depending upon when it arrives, I might try to film another segment and add it in. If not, then I will talk about it in the next podcast. One little kind of story here. So I'm not going to name the yarn shop because I don't want to do that, but I will say that there was a yarn shop that I tried to visit on our trip. According to the hours posted on the website, as well as on the door, it was open. And so I very happily went to the door, turned the knob, it opened right up, and I walked in. No one was there. And I thought, this yarn shop's kind of dark. How do you see, the yarn and know what you want to buy if it's so dark? And I realized it was dark because all the lights were off. So I looked around for a while and waited for someone to, come greet me, and because the door did make a sound when it opened, and nobody came. So I don't know if the shop was closed and there was no closed sign outside and somehow the door was unlocked, or if they had just stepped out for a moment. I'm really not sure. I did look around for just a little bit to kind of see if maybe it was someone that had just stepped out for a moment. But I thought, you know what? I really don't want to keep looking, because if the shop is not open or there's no one here, I don't want to seem like I'm in the shop when I'm not supposed to be. And also, if I find something that I really want to buy, there's no one here to give my money to. So I just left, and unfortunately that was kind of a one chance visit for that yarn shop, so I wasn't able to try to go back again to see it when it was actually open. So that was kind of an interesting experience. Definitely something that I've never run into before. So I might have had more stuff that I'm stashing, but because of that, I don't. As I was editing this episode, the mail arrived, and so I have one late addition to what I'm stashing. This is from Must Stash Yarns. So, Must Stash Yarns. In this special series that she's doing for Star Wars. This is a self-striping sock yarn, and it is actually 2 companion skeins. So one of them is based on Anakin, so you can see the red would be his red lightsaber, and the other one is based on Luke, which you can see that one there. So these are combined. There will be a midway point that shows where they break off, basically. And these are companion skeins. So I will have socks that don't match exactly, but definitely go together. So very exciting that this arrived. And something that I don't think will stay in the stash for very long. It will get on the needles pretty soon. Okay, so for what I'm reading, last time I mentioned that I was listening to Outlander, and I just finished listening to the first book, actually yesterday, so I will probably go ahead and continue with Outlander, and so listen to the second one next. And then I also mentioned that I was reading the Demon Hunting Soccer Mom series by Julie Kenner, which I did finish, actually on the trip. I did, even though I didn't have a lot of knitting time, I did get some reading time in. So I finished that book on the trip. It was, especially since it was a series-ending book, I guess it was okay. I don't know. It kind of felt like it left a lot of things open, like maybe the series should have continued, and I don't know if the publisher just decided not to continue with it, because I know that sometimes happens, or if the author decided not to continue. I didn't go look up to see if there was any information, but I don't know. It felt like there should have been more in there, and there's not. So I'm a little disappointed, but I am glad that I reread through those books, because I did overall enjoy them. So what I'm reading now is the second book in the the Great Library series by Rachel Caine. So it's called Paper and Fire, and the first book was called Ink and Bone, and I read that one last year. It's kind of a steampunk book, but it's really more of an alternate history. And there are like automatons and those types of things, which make it kind of head toward the steampunk type of thing. But basically, it's this idea that everything is controlled by the library, which has its main headquarters in Alexandria. So the Great Library of Alexandria. And they control what you read, and books are basically the actual physical books no longer exist, and so there's a black market for physical books, and so it's a really, really interesting world that Rachel Caine has created. And you have this main character whose family is in that book black market trade, and that's what he's kind of grown up with, but he himself really loves and reveres books, and he is sent to the library for training. And there's obviously a lot of stuff that happens. So I really enjoyed that first book, and the second book just came out, and so had to start reading it right away. Of course, I am reading it on my electronic device and not a physical copy of the book, which is kind of interesting if you read the book to see kind of that disconnection, I guess, between reading an electronic book versus the physical, real book. So I'm really enjoying that one. I'm about a third of the way through the book, so definitely going to get through that one quickly, since I am really enjoying it. And then in a few days, the second book of another series that I really enjoyed is being released. And this is actually the first book in that series. So this is Rebel Mechanics by Shanna Swenson. This is definitely a steampunk book. And it has as well as alternate history. In fact, the back cover says, "What if British magic kept the American Revolution from ever occurring?" And it's a fun book. The main character is a young woman who's a governess, and she goes off to her first job, basically, and gets involved with these rebel mechanics, who are basically a kind of revolutionaries against the government. And the government is the kind of the upper crust people are the ones who have magic, whereas the rebels are the ones who use the mechanics. So it's a really, really neat juxtaposition of that. And I loved this book so much. That's why I actually bought it in hard copy. And I got to go to a talk with the author. She's actually in the Dallas area, and so I got her to sign my book. And she actually did a talk with Rachel Kane and another author, P.N.L. Rod, who'd all published kind of steampunk alternate history books right around the same time. And so it was a really, really great talk that I got to go to last year. So I got to talk to this author, have her sign my book. And so the second book, which is called Rebel Magisters, I think that's the right book. I will make sure to have the link in the show notes. The second book comes out in just a few days. I've already pre-ordered my copy, and as soon as I finish the book that I'm reading now, I will turn to the second book in this series and read it. By the way, this author has written another series, the Enchanted Ink series, which is a really, really fun kind of chick lit that has magic elements in it. It's a really, really great series. So I will actually link in the show notes to her website, so you can look at her other books as well. I love her writing. I actually follow her blog and keep updated with what she writes about. So I highly, highly recommend her books. These especially, but also the Enchanted Ink series, and she also has another series, the Fairy Tale series, which I also liked. But compared to the other two, not quite as much. Definitely a good series, but Enchanted Ink and the Rebel Mechanics series are really, really awesome. So highly recommend these books. And that's what I've been reading. So the rest of this episode will be updates for my designs, Karen Dawn Designs, and my yarn company, Roundtable Yarns. So if you are not interested in listening to those updates, then you can go ahead and turn off the podcast now, and you won't miss anything else. I'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll have hopefully lots of updates for what I've been knitting, spinning, and possibly stashing. Okay, so I have some design updates. Yay! In fact, I have a pattern that should be releasing either later today or tomorrow. I just got it back from the graphic designer. I've taken a quick look over it and everything looks okay. So after I'm done recording the podcast, I'll look back over it again, make sure there aren't any last minute changes, and then get it ready to post on Ravelry. So that is a men's hat pattern. The pattern name is Fafner, and I also just got these back from the photographer, so I now actually have the sample so you can see it. This is done out of my Roundtable Yarns Lancelot, which is a worsted weight base, and it has this kind of square diamond cable shape to it. And like I said, it is sized for a men's hat, so you can see it's quite big on me, but you could roll up the brim and wear it that way if you wanted. But this will be available very soon on Ravelry. And if you are on my mailing list for my designs in yarn, then you will get a special coupon code for a discount on the pattern. So if you're not part of my mailing list, make sure you sign up so that way you can get the coupon code for this and future patterns. So Fafner will be releasing today or tomorrow. And then I had mentioned before that I designed a half pie shawl in cooperation with another dyer who does these party cakes, is what she calls them. So they're gradients or color changing yarns, and really, really beautiful color combinations. So we're going to be doing a knit along starting in September, and I just got this shawl back from the photographer as well. I had shown a picture last time. So here is the actual shawl. So you can see, there we go. You can see the color changes here. Isn't that stunning? I love this color changing yarn that she does. Anyway, I wanted to mention this because even though the knit along doesn't start until September, the dyer Anna from Art by Anna, and that's Anna with one N, the dyer is doing pre-orders of the party cakes because these are special 150 gram party cakes, so they're bigger than what she normally dyes. And it does take her a while to do the dyeing, so she's already done one round of pre-orders, and the second round of pre-orders is going on now. And I checked earlier, and she still had 4 spots available for the pre-order. So I will post a link to her shop to the pre-order in the show notes, so that way if you are interested in possibly joining us for this knit along for this shawl in September, you can be sure to get some yarn from Anna so that you can participate. You can use yarn from another dyer for the knit along, but if you do that, you won't be eligible for most of the prizes. So just keep that in mind. And again, she had 4 spots available. When I checked earlier today, hopefully there will still be at least a couple of spots available if you are interested. And if not, she will be posting some readied, dyed already yarn later in the summer, like between now and the knit along. So there will still be opportunities to get it if you miss out on the pre-order. And that's pretty much it for Karen Dawn Designs. Now that I am back from my travels, it's time to sit down and start planning out the next design. So I should have some more updates for what is coming after I get to do that. So in the next podcast. So what's going on with Roundtable Yarns? Now that I am back from Houston Fiber Fest, as well as my out-of-town trip, the Etsy shop is really stocked with lots of yarn for you to choose from, including some of the new summer colors that came out. I don't have, some of them did sell out at Houston, but I do have them on some of the bases, so you can find that in the shop, as well as lots of other colors. I do have all of the bases available, including Tristan, the new sport weight base. So if you are interested in that, make sure to check it out. I will link to the shop in the show notes, so that way if you do want to buy some yarn, you can. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is that I have started a monthly club for Roundtable Yarns. And I put club in quotation marks because it's not really something you need to commit to. In fact, another dyer, Julie Spins, which I mentioned before, she does something similar and she calls it an unclub. So it's an unclub, basically, something you are not committing to. That basically what I'm going to do is each month I'm going to have a special colorway. And that colorway will be available only for that month. So that means that once that month is passed, I will retire that color and never dye it again. So what I'll be doing is the first week of each month, I will be taking basically what amounts to pre-orders for that color. And you can choose any of my bases to order that color on. So you're not limited to any specific base. So as many of the bases as you want, as many skeins as you want. However, if you are ordering multiple skeins, I do dye in lots of 4. So if you order 8 skeins, it's going to be 2 different dye lots. I'm limited by the size of my dye pot. If you want 5 skeins, some of the bases I might be able to fit 5 skeins in. I accidentally dyed 5 skeins of Camelot once. unintentionally. Apparently I couldn't count correctly on the number of skeins that I put in the dye pot, and turned out with 5, and the color was still even. That's what I'm concerned about. If the dye pot is too crowded, the color might not get evenly distributed. But at least that time 5 skeins worked. So if you do want 5 skeins on some of the bases, I might be able to do that. But normally 4 skeins per dye lot. So any base you want the color on. So I'll be doing that each month. Because we're starting off in July and it started a little bit later, instead of the first week of July, it is actually July 5th through July 12th. So it just started 2 days ago and runs through the 12th. And you can order this month's colorway, which is this really pretty purple that also has some pink undertones in it. So this is on the Camelot base, which is a merino cashmere nylon blend. And this is a little swatch that I knit up. There you go. So again, purple with little hints of pink throughout. So this is the July monthly club colorway that you can get on any of the bases. And there is a new website, roundtableyarns.club. You can buy .club endings, and so I thought that was exciting, and I went ahead and got that URL. So specifically that will be devoted to the yarn clubs for Round Table Yarns, so all of these monthly colors that I'm doing, as well as some of the larger clubs, which I have another one planned, or that I'm planning. I have the story picked out, I have the basic details picked out. I just need to figure out exactly which colors I want to do. And then I will offer kind of an actual club, which is a little bit more of a surprise club. The colors will definitely be a surprise for that one. But for this monthly club, between now being July 7th and July 12th, you can order this colorway on any of my bases. After July 12th, you can't order this colorway again. So after July 12th, this color will be retired, and if you miss it, then you've missed it. So what I do is basically as each order comes in, I'm adding it to my dye schedule. So I'm actually almost caught up through yesterday's orders. The last one that was ordered is in the dye pot right now, cooling. And so basically whatever comes in next will be the next in the dye pot, and I will mail it to you as soon as it is dyed, with the goal of getting all of the monthly club yarn out by the end of the month. Because I started this one a few days into July, potentially it might be a few days into August for the last few skeins to go out. But my goal is order the first week of each month so you get your yarn by the end of the month, just in time to see the colorway for the next month, which I'm experimenting with now. Anyway, so this color, roundtableyarns.club, order it on any of my bases through July 12th. And really, I think that should do it for updates for Round Table Yarns. So I hope that you have a wonderful next couple of weeks. If you are interested in joining our Q3 knit along, any shawl with fingering weight yarn, make sure you check out the T-Shirts and Shawls Ravelry page and get all the information for that. I hope you have a wonderful time and happy knitting!